Welcome back to Ballistic Truth. I'm here at the Stray Cat Armory doing another episode of our Stray Cat Armory build series. And I'm covered in poison ivy, so I'm basically injured, but I will power through this for you guys. And today we are building this little minx. We're going to take it normal format. We're going to go from bare receivers, some of the gauging and checks that we do, take it downstairs, cerakote it, and then do the final assembly. We already have quite a few rounds through it so far, and it has done well. It's been pretty solid, no malfunctions. I'm about to give it its first cleaning, so while I do that, you guys can watch it be born. And if I may, allow me to introduce you to some components of note. So before we go any further, this video is for entertainment purposes only. This is not a how-to video. I am not a gunsmith, nor am I certified in any sort of gunsmithy way. I will forever be the student. I'm always trying to learn more because no matter how much you know, you can never know everything. There will always be someone who knows more, and everybody knows something I don't. I am just a gun nerd with a raging case of ADD, and the only way my brain works normally is if I am reading, thinking, learning, or doing gun-related stuff. But my absolute favorite thing to do is to build them. The process of building a gun, it scratches every itch for me, right? It checks all the boxes. From the moment you have that idea, like, okay, I'm going to build a gun, you get the excitement of thinking about it and designing it in your head and looking at pictures and researching and figuring out what you want. And slowly this idea forms into a concept. And then you get to pick out all your parts. You know, you're online, watching reviews, combing through parts catalog, figuring out what's out there, what safety selector do I want, what grip would be perfect, just getting into the nitty-gritty of the details. And then the next stage is all these parts start showing up. You come home from work, there's a box or two on your porch. You get to come in, open them, check them out. They look the same in real life as they did online. Just a little sliver of Christmas crammed into your day. And then the real fun begins. You get to start assembly and seeing how perfect you can put this thing together. And slowly, piece by piece, you watch this idea you once had take physical form. And then you get to hold that physical form and shoot that physical form and take pictures of it and post them online and show your buddies like, hey, look what I made. If you're into this kind of thing, it's one of the most fulfilling processes. So I found that my builds turn out much better if I start with a purpose. What do I want this for? What will its main use be? And assuming it's safe and legal, there's really no wrong answer to that question. Whether you want something for hunting or home defense or just something different to take to the range, having a clearly defined purpose will lay down a set of parameters, some guide rails to stay within. It's surprisingly easy to get sidetracked at some point in this process and get lost in the details and switch directions, and then you end up with something that you're not as happy with as you could be. So having a purpose and a clear direction to go in can save you a lot of heartache in the end. And the purpose of this build is a go-to general purpose rifle, something I can take to rifle classes and shooting trips that can shoot for 2 days straight with minimal maintenance. Something that just stays in the front of the safe that I could grab last second, give it a few squirts of oil, and go to the range. Just an absolute workhorse of a rifle. So in order to give it its best chance to endure that kind of life, it needs to be built to a certain standard. And you can call it mil spec or duty grade, defensive grade, it doesn't matter. And those terms do imply different usage, but the build standard is the same. Because that's all that's really describing is a standard the gun is built to that allows it to be pushed harder and not go down. It allows it to be more reliable in a wider range of conditions. So in order to meet that standard, certain things must be done. Parts are gauged in spec, fasteners are torqued, castle nuts are staked, the appropriate thread lockers used in the appropriate place, critical springs are replaced, bolts are Carpenter 158. A lot of this is just mil spec standards. And if you're building a fun gun or a range toy, then you can really build it however you want with whatever parts you want, and there's absolutely nothing wrong with that. But if your goal is to make it as reliable as possible, then a lot of this stuff is really not negotiable. And that's part of what you're paying for when you buy a true high-end rifle. Like, you can go online right now and buy a basic carbine for $500. But then that same rifle from Colt will cost 3 times as much. That's because high-quality parts and building things to this standard takes extra time and money, and that is going to be reflected in the cost. So that's kind of our theme here, or at least what we're trying to achieve, is function and reliability take first priority, but aesthetics are a really close second. Like, we're trying to build really good looking duty grade guns. Now, we won't be able to show every single step we did because the video would be way too long, and honestly it's just not that interesting. I mean, nobody wants to watch us put pin gauges and holes for 45 minutes. So we have a lot of these videos coming out though, and we'll try and show different stuff every time, so it doesn't feel like you're watching the same thing over and over. And we'll definitely put in the more interesting stuff. We did run into a couple of minor fitment issues on this, and we'll show that and what we did to rectify it. And we'll throw on some tunes and sit back, watch the rest of this build kind of ASMR style, I think. Not entirely sure what that means. All right, so we're just breaking out the old go, no-go gauges here. We're going to check the bolt face diameter as well as the cam pin hole. And I like to stick the cam pin in there and feel how much slop there is. If there's too much slop, it'll prematurely wear the cam pin. It can also stretch the bolt. And then we're going to check the pivot and takedown pin holes in the upper receiver. One, we want the pins to fit, but two, we're making sure these holes aren't oversized. Oversized holes will give us too much play up and down between the two receivers, which stacked with other tolerances could potentially affect how the bolt interacts with the rounds when it's stripping them from the magazine. So now we're doing the headspace check. It's a 223 go minimum headspace, 14636. It turns, so that's good. Next I'm going to check with the field gauge, which is the maximum headspace. We do not want this bolt to turn, and it doesn't. And then since it's a hard use rifle, I check with a 556 go, which is the 14646 gauge. And it's tight, but it does turn, so we know we have a true 556 chamber. Here I'm going to check the firing pin protrusion, which is how far the firing pin sticks out of the bolt. We're looking for 028 to 035. We're 032, so that is pretty darn good. I want to check the thread concentricity of the barrel threads. So I put the muzzle device on, mount the suppressor, and then I check with a suppressor alignment rod. It's not dead in the middle, but it's fine. It's safe to shoot a suppressor out of. So next I want to see how the feed ramps and the barrel extension match up to the M4 feed ramps cut in the upper receiver. And it's not terrible, a tiny little bit of overhang. I'm going to polish them anyway, so we're going to go ahead and match them up. So I take a little material off to match the feed ramps up, and then I use a felt bob and some polish to polish them up really good, get them nice and shiny. So the way it was originally probably wouldn't have caused any issues. There's a lot of variables involved in that, but again, reliability is our first priority here. So perfectly matched, well-polished feed ramps, we just don't have to worry about. So I'm just using a borescope here to make sure the old gas holes are lined up. We're going to dimple both set screws in the gas block. So I have a little dimpling tool. That's a hollow 1032 set screw, and it has like a little precision starter punch that goes in there. So you give it a few whacks with a hammer, and you should be left with a perfectly centered starter hole. Then I have a little jig. You probably freehand it from there, but I have a little barrel dimpling jig that I use, because once you get it set up on there right, it's almost impossible to mess up. And it guides the drill bit, keeps it from slipping off, and keeps the holes centered right where they should be. So I like to pin the gas blocks whenever I can. Sometimes you just can't, at least at my skill level, but Rifle Speed already has the holes drilled in the gas block, and it comes with a pin, so I just need to drill the channel through the barrel for it to go in. So I snuck down a couple set screws and then took it down to the drill press and set everything up and set my phone up and got all ensconced in what I was doing and never hit record. So here's footage of me running a drill bit through a hole that I've already drilled just for show.
Oh, be beautiful. Be beautiful.
That fits on there. So I'm going to go ahead and put the gas tube on and install the gas block on the barrel, just so I can make sure there's no interference issues with the handguard. Make sure the gas key is dropping onto the gas tube without any resistance, how it's supposed to. All right, here comes the best part, and that's putting the handguard on. The handguard will have the biggest impact on aesthetics. It will define the look of the rifle more than any one part. So when you slide that on there, you're getting your first real glimpse of what it's going to look like. So our pivot pin and our takedown pin holes are a little undersized. The go gauge won't go in there. So all we need to do is make sure that our pins fit in these holes. As long as they fit and they're not binding, then we're good. It's not a fail. So kind of same thing with the safety selector hole. The go gauge doesn't quite want, it wants to start, but it's not going in there. So just slightly undersized. So we just need to do the same thing. Make sure the selector fits in there. It doesn't bind, turns. It does, so we're good. So here's where we ran into our problem here. The trigger pin holes are slightly undersized. So it seemed like every hole in this lower receiver was slightly undersized. So we need to see if our trigger pins will fit in there. And they do not. So it's a Geisley trigger that comes with Geisley trigger pins. All Geisley pins are 1/1000th oversized, which is really nice if you have oversized holes, but it's not working in our favor now. So I'm just gonna grab whatever trigger pins I have on hand and see if I can find something that will fit in these holes, which I don't have anything that will fit in the holes. So we need to enlarge these holes a little bit. What we can do is oil lap it. So I keep an undersized, worn out trigger pin just for this. And I'm just dipping this in oil. It can be any kind of oil. It's not like cutting fluid or lapping compound or anything, just any regular oil. And we're soaking the pin in it, and then we're just sticking it in the hole and working it back and forth. We're just kind of pre-wearing it in. Just keep working it and then stop and test your trigger pin and see if it'll fit, and you just keep doing that until you get the trigger pin fitting how you want to. So it's almost there. It started to go. Probably could have hammered it in, but that's not what we're looking for. We want trigger pins to push in and move freely. So just keep working it. Until it fits how it should. So I just do that to all 4 holes until both trigger pins are fitting nicely. So next, since we switched trigger pins, we just want to make sure they're going to work with our trigger. So I'm just taking the pins, putting them on the trigger and disconnector and hammer, just making sure they spin freely. That's all we're looking for. The hammer has a J spring in it, so you can just put 1 pin on each side. So it's fine. We're good to go with these trigger pins. So what I want to feel here is how much slop is in the threads, if any. The more slop you have, the more susceptible it is to shooting loose. That felt pretty good. Now we have our new trigger and pins installed in our recently enlarged holes, just giving it the old fire control group test, and everything is good there. The last thing I want to check is the carrier travel depth, how far that the bolt carrier goes into the buffer tube. If it's too deep, the gas key can hit the back of the lower receiver and will cause the gas key screws to break. So this my camera cut off here, but it was a little tight. I'm going to put an offset buffer pin in there to allow the buffer to be screwed in one more time when we do the final assembly. All right, so it's time to start cerakoting. We're going to spray the Coyote Tan first, so that's going to be both upper receivers, the handguard, and the charging handle. I've already cleaned them up really well, did the acetone soak. Now I have literally the cheapest sandblaster I could possibly find on Amazon, so it's difficult enough to see in there while you're actually sandblasting, but trying to get any kind of camera footage would just not even be worth watching. It would just be a blurry cloud of blasting media. All right, so we got everything sandblasted. It's good and clean. We've done our little pre-bake, got some Coyote Tan mixed up, and we are just about ready to spray. So I'm just playing with the setting, adjusting the settings on the gun to get the spray pattern how I want it. And I am not a certified Cerakote applicator. I am 100% YouTube educated, and there are some amazing how-to Cerakote YouTube channels out there. And Cerakote's website is an enormous resource. So they do have their certification class you can take, but they don't withhold information like just for their certified applicators. They have laid out all the information for anybody to get on there and learn how to do this, and they will sell you any of their products. So the gun I got came from them. It's not the $300 like Iwata LP80 that they recommend, the high dollar one. It's more of a budget version. It came in a starter kit. You can get a Cerakote starter kit. It comes with the budget gun, which is already set up for. There are certain specs that they recommend on your gun to be ideal for Cerakote. So it already comes set up with that. And it came with 3 Cerakote colors, a mixing beaker, some filters, the hardener, tools to maintain the gun. So it's a pretty good deal because each one of those little 4-ounce bottles of Cerakote are almost $40. And they'll go a long way, but that's $120 of Cerakote in there. So for $80, you get all that stuff. So I thought it was an easy kit to buy. And let me tell you, learning how to Cerakote has been therapeutic for me. Just like every stage of it, like getting something really clean and the sandblasting and then the spraying. It's like popping a good zit. Like you don't know why. It's just oddly satisfying. And which I haven't been doing it that long, but when I was learning how to Cerakote, I had this lower receiver that was mismilled. So I would just blast it, clean it, Cerakote it, take a picture, blast it, clean it, Cerakote it, take a picture. I did that over and over again until I got them where they were coming out pretty good every time. And I could not wait to come home and Cerakote that lower. So it's been a fun process, and Travis has done it with me too, and he has gotten really good at it. He's already so meticulous, and he's a bit of a perfectionist, so this is right up his alley. But man, his stuff looks like it came straight out of a Cerakote studio. So here's my little oven. It is a cheap smoker oven that I got off Amazon. I just made some modifications. I gutted it, moved the rack up a little bit, filled all the holes, added a couple of temperature sensors, and it works really well. So there's our little parts. They came out looking pretty good. So now we're just going to mix up some graphite black. So we're going to do the buffer tube, all the little small parts, try and get everything matching so it looks nice. So for anybody that's thinking about or looking into doing this out of your house as a hobby, just go for it. It's not nearly as intimidating as it initially seems when you start looking into it. You don't have a lot of deviation from the instructions that Cerakote gives, but those instructions are very clearly laid out. They're very simple to follow. A lot of it's well within your control. And there was a little bit of a learning curve to it, and it's mostly just with your spray gun, learning what's too wet, what's too dry. But I promise by the time you spray 5 or 6 things, you're really going to be getting the hang of it. Things are going to come out looking really good. Alright, so we're spraying the old graphite black on the buffer tube. Black's one of the funnest colors to spray because it's just easy to see where you've been. So we're doing the buffer tube and all the small parts. The biggest challenge with the small parts is like how to hang them. Like I was using a magnet here for the end plate. I don't have any kind of special hangers. This is all coat hangers I've cut up that I've bend to shape, whatever it is I'm spraying. So you just got to get a little creative with how you're hanging the small parts so they don't interfere with the Cerakote job. All right, here we go. Final assembly. Oh, I'm getting really excited just watching it. I'm literally holding the final product as I do this voiceover. So we are going to assemble the lower. There are a lot of different ways you can do this. You can start in a lot of different places. I'm starting with the trigger because it's getting a Geisley Maritime bolt catch. It's an extended bolt catch, and I like to push the trigger pins in from the bolt catch side. For whatever reason, it's just much easier for me. And if that bolt catch is already installed, then you can't push the hammer pin past it. So that's why I'm starting with the trigger. But you can do it really in any order that you would like. So getting the hammer pin in is always the most difficult of the two. It's harder to hold in there, and you're pushing past the J-spring that runs in the hammer, and that's what retains that hammer pin. So there's a lot of little tips and tricks you can do. I like to cock the hammer so it sits on the sear, and then it's a little bit easier to control. But once you get everything lined up, you just have to push past that J-spring. So we're installing the magazine catch now. Nothing difficult about this at all. I'm just being extra careful. My main concern is not scratching the fresh Cerakote job we just put on it. Another thing to bear in mind is everything has a coat of Cerakote on it, the magazine catch and the lower receiver. So it's not much, but it does add dimension. So that's why we do all these little checks we did before. Some of them may seem silly, but if this magazine catch is sticky, now I know it is just the Cerakote, and we can kind of wear it in, just like we did with the trigger pins, kind of oil lapped it. Same principle, but if we had not done those checks, then we wouldn't know if it's the Cerakote or if something were out of spec. So say the forward assist was binding, it wouldn't move smoothly because it was out of spec and we had to replace it. Well, now we have to go mix up another batch of Cerakote and go through all that again. And there's a slight chance it could be off color-wise. We always spray matching components from the same batch because that guarantees they'll all be exactly the same color. If I mix up another batch, there's a slight chance it could be off a little bit, which isn't the end of the world, but it's all just a big pain that can be easily avoided by doing those checks in the first place. All right, I know somebody's going to shame me for using this thing, but you know what? This was the best $8 I ever spent on Amazon. I mean, normally I would just use the pin to smash it in there and do it, but everything's Cerakoted, and this tool works so good, and it just guarantees you're not going to scratch your new Cerakote job. All right, so here's the offset buffer retaining pin I was talking about. So the nipple, the part that physically retains the buffer, is offset all the way to one side rather than being centered how it normally is. And it's the perfect distance that allows you to get exactly one more turn of the buffer tube in, so you can decrease the carrier travel depth if it's too far. So one thing you do need to be aware of, if you do use these offset pins, sometimes that extra turn of the buffer tube, depending on the tube and how the lower's milled, that extra turn will allow the edge of the buffer to protrude into the lower receiver. So sometimes you have to take a little bit of material off because that will make it either really difficult or impossible to close the upper onto the lower. So this is my little lower receiver jig. One, it's just a nice way to hold it in the vise while I torque the castle nut. And two, it locks the buffer tube in line with the grip. So when the castle nut's torqued, it doesn't get like twisted or canted, which won't really affect performance. But then when you put the stock on, it's kind of twisted or cattywampus compared to the grip, and it just feels cheap. So after installing the offset buffer pin and turning the buffer tube in one more, this gap looks a lot better. It's about right where it should be. All right, so it's a hard use rifle and we are building it to mil-spec standards, which means the castle nut is staked in two places. So this is how I like to install forward assist. The Wheeler reaction rod has this cool feature where it locks into the barrel extension. So I can shove it into the vise and let the vise push the forward assist all the way in and hold it there. So that way I can use two hands to put the roll pin in, because I am trying my gosh darndest not to put any scratches on this new finish. And it's going to get scratched, and I'm not going to care, and I'm going to treat it like a rifle. But I just want to take one picture of it with no scratches on it. I like to use rock set on my high heat applications because the temperature rating is good to 2000 degrees. You could probably use like high temperature red there as well, but something like blue Loctite just won't cut it for those gas block muzzle device situations. The temperature rating's too low. Now, it's kind of hard to tell there. We're just tapping in the gas block pin. And now putting together the old pain in the butt charging handle. So I'm just checking one last final time, again, just to make sure that this muzzle device will get us to over 16 inches. It's not something I want to mess around with or assume. Definitely a measure twice situation right here. So it does, it gets us to a little over 16 3/8. So that's perfect. A little bit of wiggle room. So the muzzle devices, as most of them do, already come with a hole for pinning. So I enlarge it slightly, and then I drill down into the barrel threads a little pocket so the pin will sit below the surface of the barrel. Then I give the pin a little bevel to match the pocket, the shape the drill bit made. So it fits nicely in there. So give it a few taps, make sure it's seated, and then weld it on up. Now I am not a great welder. My welds are functional, but they are ugly. So I have a lot of cleanup to do afterwards. And even when I'm completely done, there's clearly a weld there, which it's okay, I guess. I mean, at least if anybody comes sniffing around, it's very obvious that it's been pinned and welded.
dun, dun, dun,